Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Ashley returns to TOFF the fake mask. Matt's true identity is shocking. CBS Y&R spoilers unravel a storm in Genoa City like nothing the Newmans, Abbotts, or even the relentlessly resourceful residents of the town have seen in years, because this time, the chaos doesn't start with a power struggle at Genoa, an underhanded Newman Enterprises takeover attempt, or even the usual manipulations that float through town like perfume and scandal. Instead, it begins with a mystery lurking right in the heart of the Abbott family, one that has been slowly tightening like a trap around everyone involved in Abby's personal life and Claire's fight for normalcy, and all of it tied to the enigmatic and increasingly suspicious figure known as Matt, a young man who arrived in town with polite manners, a polished smile, and gaps in his story that were just believable enough not to set off alarms at first, at least not until traces of information began to surface, tiny disjointed puzzle pieces that only someone with Ashley Abbott's sharp, analytical, emotionally battle-hardened mind could interpret for what they truly were. Proof that Matt was not what he claimed to be. Ashley returns from Paris unexpectedly, unannounced, and without her usual soft grace or the breezy calm she tends to carry after European excursions. She arrives in Genoa City with urgency, emotional weight in her voice, and a chilling message that something is deeply wrong back home, something connected to Matt, who has been slowly infiltrating the Abbott sphere by charming Abby, gaining sympathy from Tracy, forming peculiar emotional rapport with Claire, and doing all of this while presenting himself as a lost young man trying to repair a shattered life. But Ashley, perhaps the family member who has lost the most to secrets and manipulations, refuses to be fooled again. The truth strikes her abroad when she stumbles across files, medical records, and identity documents that should not exist, records that link Matt not to a tragic past, but to something calculated, engineered, and darkly strategic. The revelation hits her like a freight train. The person calling himself Matt does not exist under that name, and the identity he wears like a mask is one he stole, constructed, or was assigned. Suddenly everything clicks into place. His evasiveness, the inconsistencies in his stories, the way he always changed the subject when asked about the past, and most disturbingly, the way he positioned himself near vulnerable members of the Abbott family, particularly Abby and Claire, making himself appear trustworthy, considerate, protective, and emotionally present in ways that ensured he became essential to them before anyone even realized what was happening. Ashley's return is not quiet, private, or delayed. She walks into the Abbott mansion mid-conversation, stopping Abby and Matt cold as she announces that the man standing beside her daughter is a fraud whose lies reach farther and carry deeper damage than anyone in the room is prepared to acknowledge. The confrontation is brutal, not just because Ashley has come home armed with proof, but because Matt drops the good boy routine the instant he realizes she knows the truth. The softness in his eyes vanishes, replaced by a cold, calculating stare that chills Abby, who suddenly begins replaying every interaction they've shared. The moments she mistook as genuine connection, the stories that once moved her, the things he claimed to have survived, and now sees something different in them, something predatory. But Ashley isn't done. She reveals that Matt's real identity is tied to a long-forgotten enemy. A revenge agenda that has been simmering for years, one connected to business betrayals, ruined families, and a generational vendetta that predates even Abby's involvement. Matt's true name, something heavy and explosive when Ashley finally speaks it aloud, sends shockwaves through the room. Not just a new name, but one that carries history, shame, manipulation, and a connection that makes the entire Abbott family feel suddenly violated. Because this man was never in Genoa City to start over or build something new. He was sent to tear them apart from the inside. Matt smiles, a slow, chilling, heartbreak, and the mask comes off not with panic but with absolute confidence, revealing a personality colder, sharper, and more calculating than anyone expected from the mild-mannered young man who ingratiated himself into the Abbott circle. Abby's devastation is immediate. She feels the betrayal like a blade, and Claire, who has barely begun her own emotional recovery, finds herself triggered, furious, and ready to lash out at someone who dared exploit yet another vulnerable moment in her life. Tracy, always the nurturing heart of the family, is struck silent, her disappointment immeasurable because she believed in Matt's potential, believed he was a lost soul who could be guided, healed, and saved. But the truth is darker. Matt was trained, prepared, psychologically weaponized for this deception, his very existence sculpted by someone with a long-standing grudge against the Abbotts. Ashley confronts him, demanding to know how far the plan has gone, whether he's already stolen company data, manipulated Abby's position at society, or inserted himself into Claire's mental health case for strategic with long-term impact. Matt refuses to deny it. In fact, he begins confessing with disturbing calmness, recounting how every meeting, conversation, and carefully staged emotional moment with the Abbotts was planned, studied, and executed for maximum effect. He explains how his real life was shaped by watching another family collapse under the weight of public humiliation brought on by the Abbotts' actions decades ago. Actions Ashley barely remembers, but which someone else never forgot. Suddenly the question becomes, who is the mastermind behind Matt's infiltration? Is it someone from Jack's cutthroat business past? Someone Victor destroyed and left to rot? Or an old rival from the extended business world whose chapters were closed, but whose wounds remained open? As Abby breaks down, demanding to know whether anything between them was real, Matt pauses, long enough that the room thinks humanity might crack through his armor, and then he answers with cold sincerity, "No, not a thing." The cruelty of the statement leaves Abby crushed, and Claire nearly lunges at him before Ashley holds her back, reminding her that people like Matt win the moment they make you lose control. But then the situation escalates because Matt is not out of cards. He reveals that he still has leverage, files, recordings, private communications he could unleash that would destroy not just one Abbott, but several. And as the panic begins to flicker through the room, Ashley steps forward again, reminding him that she didn't come back unarmed. She has allies, information, and proof strong enough to unravel not just Matt's schemes but those of anyone backing him. The confrontation becomes a chess match, one where emotional connections, business strategies, and personal histories collide, and the future of the Abbotts becomes precarious. Meanwhile, Jack is still unaware of the immediate danger unfolding. Victor Newman is preparing another corporate chess move that could ironically place him on a collision course with the truth, and Diane, Billy, and Kyle are each absorbed in their own issues, oblivious to the storm about to spill through Genoa City like ink spreading through water. The question becomes not just who Matt really is, but whether his presence is part of an even larger conspiracy designed to do what countless enemies have tried and failed to accomplish: take down the entire Abbott family from the inside. His calculated infiltration of Abby and Claire's emotional circles proves he wasn't just after business or corporate sabotage. He wanted personal destruction, emotional collapse, generational damage, and psychological devastation. Ashley's return becomes the fulcrum point that prevents the Abbotts from walking straight into ruin, and she refuses to let Matt escape without exposing everything. But he tries. He pushes back with a subtle threat, something involving Claire's therapy files, Abby's personal regrets, and the fragile trust the family has worked so hard to rebuild after so many betrayals. Ashley stands firm. Abby gathers herself, Claire steadies, and for the first time since Matt stepped into their lives, he realizes that the Abbott women united are not prey. They are fighters, survivors, and women who have rebuilt themselves from ashes more than once. Matt's exit is not triumphant. He is forced out, cornered, his mask torn off completely, but as he walks away, there is a final chilling smile that warns that this is far from over, that someone else is waiting, someone with deeper influence and resources, and the first strike was only reconnaissance. Ashley knows it too. This victory feels hollow because now she must uncover the entire network behind Matt's deception, trace the motive back to the source, and prepare for whatever comes next. Genoa City is about to enter a new war, one that isn't fought entirely in boardrooms or over inheritance disputes, but one that threatens the emotional core of the Abbott legacy. And just as Matt disappears around the corner, Ashley vows, quietly, fiercely, that this time no Abbott will fall unaware ever again. What follows the shocking unmasking of Matt in the Abbott mansion is not a moment of calm, resolution, or relief, but a new beginning of chaos, emotional unraveling, and strategic consequences that ripple out across Genoa City like a stone thrown into a lake, disturbing every alliance, every secret, every silent wound that the residents thought they had buried. Because once Ashley exposes Matt's true identity, the Abbotts are forced not only to deal with the immediate damage but also to reckon with how deeply they allowed a stranger to infiltrate their lives, and that reckoning affects each of them differently. Ashley becomes the unyielding warrior she has always had the capacity to be, her mind still running 1,000 miles an hour, identifying every possible hole in the family's defenses and working through her fear that Matt's presence was only the first phase of a larger assault. Abby moves from heartbreak to humiliation to rage, feeling like she's reliving every emotional failure she swore she'd never repeat, especially after her disastrous history with men who manipulated, lied, or treated her as a pawn. And Claire, shaken to the core, struggles with the reality that someone intentionally targeted her emotionally again at a moment when she was fighting desperately to reclaim her identity, her autonomy, and her sense of safety after a lifetime of manipulation under Aunt Jordan. But Ashley doesn't give them time to spiral. She gathers them in the living room, takes command of the room, and tells them something none of them expected. Matt's deception didn't start in Genoa City but had roots planted years earlier, and she has the medical documents, bank trail, and digital traces to prove that someone created, funded, and guided this false identity long before he ever set foot near the Abbotts. The immediate plan becomes clear. They need to map out everything Matt accessed: Jabot internal files, society accounting sheets, Claire's therapy notes from her rehabilitation, Abby's digital calendar, even security footage that might now be compromised. Abby begins listing what she remembers Matt having access to: code she shared, files she opened while he was nearby, conversations she had in his presence. But each memory hits her like another bruise, and at one point she breaks down, realizing that she trusted him enough that she might have said things she should never have said aloud, things that could be weaponized against the family. Claire tries to comfort her, but the attempt triggers another emotional avalanche. Claire begins blaming herself, insisting that she should have sensed something off sooner, because if anyone should be good at reading manipulation by now, it should be her, given the psychological prison Jordan raised her in. But Ashley immediately stops her, reminding Claire that predators thrive not because their victims are weak but because they are highly practiced. People like Jordan, like Matt, like every shadow figure who engineers trauma, don't succeed due to intelligence alone but because they choose their moments, their tactics, and their targets with surgical precision. For a moment, Abby and Claire sit with that truth, their emotional breathing steadying, and the conversation shifts to the most pressing strategic move: who Matt works for and how they trace the origin of this plan. Ashley shares that her research uncovered something disturbing. A shell corporation created almost 15 years ago, with ties to both European pharmaceutical interests and domestic business industries, who suffered in corporate wars that pitted Abbott, Newman, and Chancellor powerhouses against each other. This corporation has changed names several times, laundering identity markers like a snake shedding skin, but every path leads to a figure no one has yet been able to directly connect. A ghost sitting in the middle of old financial battles, possibly someone the Abbotts have forgotten, but someone who clearly never forgot them. By the time Ashley finishes her explanation, Abby's numbness has turned into fury. She storms across the room, pacing with the kind of simmering fire she inherited from her father as much as her mother, vowing that she refuses to be played again, not by another man, not by another conniving opportunist who thinks the Abbott women are weak. Claire finds strength in Abby's anger. It reminds her that the Abbotts, despite all their fractures, failures, separations, and scars, always rise when someone threatens one of their own. Tracy, the emotional backbone of the family, remains quiet, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, tears threatening but never falling. She reminds them in a quiet and devastating voice that the worst part of betrayal is not the act itself, but the fact that it makes you question your own judgment. How did she not see it? How did she let him feel safe under their roof? How did her natural kindness become the very weapon used against her family? Ashley hugs her and promises that this happened not because Tracy was weak, but because Matt was skilled. Too skilled for someone acting alone. That statement becomes the turning point because now the theory feels undeniable. Matt is a pawn, someone trained, someone who likely has handlers, someone chosen for his ability to blend into emotional space, build connection, learn weaknesses, and feed information upward to someone more powerful who is orchestrating a long game. Meanwhile, elsewhere in Genoa City, Jack is in the Jabot office reviewing merger documents, unaware that his family is already under attack, but he feels something creeping beneath the surface: tension, disruption, a storm he can't name yet. Diane is nearby, excited about new market strategies, but Jack's mind keeps wandering. He senses he's missing something. The call from Ashley will soon shatter the calm veneer of his day, but at this moment, he remains dangerously in the dark. And across the city, Victor Newman receives an encrypted message from one of his analysts. An anomaly in the Jabot network, a data signature unfamiliar but skilled. Victor's eyes narrow, the competitive edge in him awakening immediately as he senses something happening inside the Abbott corporate corridors that has nothing to do with him. Normally, Victor would be thrilled by the chance to exploit weakness, but this time something feels off. He informs Michael Baldwin that the Abbotts may have a breach, and for once Victor seems inclined not to attack but to monitor, because this smells less like corporate espionage and more like a strike against both major business empires in general, which is a problem for the entire landscape of Genoa City. Back at the Abbott mansion, Ashley begins working with Abby on digital damage control, changing passwords, locking financial accounts, instructing Kyle to update Jabot's cybersecurity, and issue a silent internal audit before anyone outside the family notices movement. Claire calls her therapist to warn that her recovery files may have been accessed, and the therapist, horrified, advises that they prepare for possible legal action because if patient therapy notes were stolen or weaponized, this becomes not just emotional warfare but a federal criminal offense. Abby moves into action mode. She pulls out her laptop and begins searching through old text messages, looking for anything Matt may have referenced that hinted at his connection, perhaps a slip of a name, a location, a contact. A conversation that now has new meaning under the harsh light of hindsight. But while scanning, she realizes something far worse. Matt not only studied the Abbotts, he studied the Newmans too. Names appear in his saved notes. Victor, Nick, Victoria, Adam, even Connor. He wasn't just observing. He was building psychological profiles. Suddenly the room goes quiet again, because this revelation means Matt's mission wasn't aimed at just one household. He was gathering intelligence on the most powerful family lines in Genoa City. Ashley processes all of this while leaning back against the fireplace mantel, the weight of her responsibilities settling across her shoulders. She has to warn Jack, has to warn Victor, has to understand whether this new threat is personal only to the Abbotts or whether Matt's mysterious employer intends to destabilize the entire corporate and social structure of Genoa City. And that question leads her to another chilling realization. If this truly was only Phase 1, what is Phase 2 going to look like? A corporate data leak? A hostile takeover? The exposure of personal scandals? Something involving Claire's past? Abby's reputation? Or even Jack's sobriety? There are too many possibilities and not enough information. Then Ashley remembers the moment she discovered the truth abroad. She had been attending a meeting in Paris with one of her former business contacts when they casually asked whether she ever followed up on the settlement from the McCall family dispute, a question that made absolutely no sense to Ashley because she had never been involved in a McCall settlement. When she pressed, the contact grew uncomfortable, explaining they had been approached by a young man claiming to represent Ashley in an old, unresolved corporate matter. That was the first spark of suspicion. The next came when she requested his identity information, and the passport number didn't match its registered holder. She spent days pulling threads, digging through archives, calling in favors, tracking the false identity through layers of shell companies until she found the origin. An administrative registration connected to someone known only as JM. The initials gnawed at her the entire flight home. Now, as she sits in the Abbott mansion, she wonders if she's misreading them, or if the person behind JM is someone the Abbotts already know. Meanwhile, Matt slips through hidden corners of Genoa City, not running, not panicking, but repositioning. He stops at a safe house, an apartment too plain and undecorated to be someone's home, yet too expensive to be a throwaway space, where he removes a false phone SIM card, inserts a new one, and begins typing a secure message. The message reads, "They know. Phase 1 compromised. Proceeding to Phase 2. Moments later a response appears, short, icy, and terrifying. "Yes. Activate." Matt closes the phone, removes the battery, and tosses both into separate dumpsters, vanishing into the shadows with the chilling calculation of someone who has done this before, someone trained for situations where identities crumble and missions shift. But while Matt believes he is staying ahead, he underestimates one thing. Ashley Abbott is not merely a victim reacting to trauma. She is a strategist, a survivor, a woman who rebuilt herself from psychological collapse more than once, and she refuses to let history repeat. She reaches out to someone unexpected, Tucker McCall. Tucker, who has history with Ashley, history with corporate espionage, and connections to the underground business world, hears Ashley's voice on the line and immediately understands the situation is not personal drama but war, because her tone carries a seriousness he hasn't heard in years. When Ashley explains what she discovered, Tucker becomes unnervingly quiet, then asks only one question. Did he mention the name Barrett? The silence that follows is suffocating because Ashley did not, yet Tucker knows what that name means. A family that Tucker once ruined during a corporate arms race decades ago. A family whose business collapse triggered generational poverty, psychological fallout, and a simmering hatred that could have blossomed into exactly this kind of long-game revenge. If that family trained Matt, funded him, and sharpened him as a weapon, then this situation is far bigger than Ashley suspected. While Tucker processes the consequences of a ghost from his past rising for payback, the Abbotts prepare for the next wave. They are not yet united. Jack still doesn't know. Kyle is still unaware. Diane is in the dark. But the women standing in the Abbott mansion feel something shifting. For once, it is not romance, not personal betrayal, not sibling rivalry tearing at the family's foundation. It is an outside threat requiring unity, discipline, and clarity. Claire asks the one question hanging over all of them. What if Matt's goal was never data, but people? The room goes cold because the possibility makes disturbing sense. Matt spent his energy integrating emotionally, especially with the most psychologically vulnerable Abbott women. Instead of stealing files, he stole trust. Instead of hacking servers, he hacked hearts. Ashley realizes Claire may be right. There may be no obvious damage yet because the real attack hasn't happened. Someone may now have enough emotional intel to predict how the Abbotts will react to any crisis, how they can be manipulated, triggered, broken, or turned against each other. Meanwhile, Victor learns through quiet channels that the McCall name has resurfaced in European finance markets. Something that should be impossible because nothing linked to Tucker should be reactivating without a reason. Victor sits back in his office chair and speaks aloud to no one in particular. This isn't over. Something's coming. In another part of the city, Jack's phone buzzes. Ashley's emergency message finally arrives. He reads the words once, then twice, the grip on his phone tightening as his mind shifts from business mode to battle mode. Whatever is coming, whatever Matt was sent to initiate, the Abbott family is now standing at the edge of a war. And Ashley's return, dramatic and devastating though it was, may have been the only thing preventing their total downfall. The real question now is not whether Matt has been unmasked. The real question is who is behind the mask behind his mask, and how far they are willing to go to burn the Abbotts to the ground.